Welcome to another true crime tale, and for this video we're going to cross to the south side of the River Thames to learn of a thoroughfare that has now been demolished but which was situated between Webber Row and Westminster Bridge Road in the Waterloo district of Victorian London. In mid-November 1888, with London still reeling from the recent Jack the Ripper murder of Mary Kelly, which had taken place on the 9th of November, an attack occurred here which had certain hallmarks in common with the Whitechapel murders. Reynolds's newspaper reported the story of what had happened in its issue of Sunday, November the 18th. A real Jack the Ripper. At Southwark Police Court, Collingwood Hilton Fenwick, 26, described as of no occupation but said to be of independent means, was charged before Mr. Wyndham Slade with stabbing Ellen Worsfold, an unfortunate. The prosecutrix, a good-looking girl of 19, stated that at about 1 o'clock the other morning she met the prisoner in the Westminster Bridge Road, and he accompanied her to her lodgings at 18 Anne's Place, Waterloo Road. On arriving there, he gave her half a crown. He then came close to her and stabbed her in the abdomen. Crying out for help, she pushed him away and made for the door, but he intercepted her, put his back against it, and prevented her from going out, at the same time pointing a small penknife at her in a threatening manner. She then found herself bleeding very much, and also saw blood on her assailant's hands. A young man named James Peters lived in the next room, and she called to him. The prisoner then said, "Let me go." The witness replied that she would not do so until the arrival of a policeman, whereupon the accused immediately opened the door and ran down the stairs, she following. Peters came out, and they both pursued Fenwick, Peters catching up with him in Tower Street, Waterloo Road, where the defendant gave up to him a knife, a small, pearl-handled, one-bladed penknife. He was then detained until the arrival of plainclothes Constable Bettle, 95L, who took the prisoner into custody. Peters deposed that on hearing the girl's cries he came out of his room without stockings or boots and ran after the accused. When he got up to him, he was afraid to go near him, because from what the girl told him, he was afraid he was encountering Jack the Ripper. Fenwick gave up the knife and said if he would let him go, he would give him a sovereign, but he held him until the constable took charge of him. Dr. Frederick W. Farr, acting divisional surgeon of the L Division, stated that he had examined the prosecutrix at the Kennington Road police station, and he found her to be suffering from a punctured wound half an inch long, which entered the flesh in the lower part of the abdomen. There had been great loss of blood. Although the wound was not serious, it would be a long time before it healed. Constable Bettle deposed that when the prisoner was given into his charge, he said, "I have made a great fool of myself. I have made a mistake which will be a warning to me for a long time to come." The accused had been drinking. Inspector Jackson, who had charge of the case, stated that Fenwick was a man of means, living on his income, and had hitherto borne a good character. The prisoner, who seemed to feel his position acutely, and when the doctor gave his evidence looked perfectly staggered and nearly fainted, was remanded for a week in custody. Fenwick's next court appearance was on Wednesday the 21st of November, and the proceedings were reported by the Manchester Courier 2 days later. At Southwark Police Court on Wednesday, Collingwood Hilton Fenwick, 26, described as a gentleman of independent means, residing at 34 Methley Street, Kennington Road, was brought on remand, charged before Mr. Slade with unlawfully cutting and wounding Ellen Worsfold with intent to do her grievous bodily harm. The case being called, Mr. Sims, prosecuting, said that the facts had been brought before the Director of Public Prosecutions, and he was instructed to ask that the prisoner should be committed for trial, charged with intent to murder. Information had reached the Treasury that the prisoner had been guilty of other offences, but as these had been committed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, he did not propose to take any cognizance of them. Mr. Wantner, for the prisoner, said he could not oppose the application to commit the prisoner, but he denied that his client had been guilty of the other offences imputed to him. Mr. Slade committed the prisoner for trial at the Central Criminal Court. On Wednesday, December the 12th, Collingwood Hilton Fenwick was tried at the Central Criminal Court, or the Old Bailey, charged with feloniously wounding Ellen Worsfold with intent to do grievous bodily harm. Since there was little doubt that he had carried out the attack, the defence resorted to calling witnesses to testify as to the good character of the defendant. It was stated that he was the son of Mr. Fenwick, late of the firm of Messrs. Aspinall and Fenwick, solicitors of Liverpool. The Old Bailey transcript of the case actually gives no information as to what transpired, other than to note that the details of this case are unfit for publication. It does though state that he was found not guilty. Interestingly, all the newspaper accounts say that he was found guilty. So either the newspapers misreported or the Old Bailey transcript was wrong. Consulting the after-trial calendar of prisoners for 1855 to 1931, it seems that he was actually found guilty, and the judge, Sir Henry Hawkins, sentenced him to 12 months' imprisonment. The reason for the discrepancy might well be that he was initially charged with intent to murder, but was found not guilty of that offence, and was instead found guilty of the lesser charge of unlawful wounding, but only the original charge was for some reason recorded in the Old Bailey record. Either way, the Old Bailey record is most certainly wrong, which demonstrates a point Steve Blomer and myself are always making in respect to the Jack the Ripper case, the importance of checking as many sources as possible before accepting any fact as definitive. But enough of that. As for Collingwood Hilton Fenwick, he went on to marry a woman 21 years his junior in 1904, and she became Mrs. Annie Fenwick. One can't help wondering whether he enlightened his new wife about his youthful indiscretion and prison time, or if he decided that it might be best if he kept that particular period of his life secret from her. The 1911 census shows he and Annie living at 37 Newcastle Road, Wavertree in Liverpool, and lists his personal occupation as still being of private means derived from house property. He died at the age of 55 in July 1917 in Truro in Cornwall and was buried in Liverpool. His victim, Ellen Worsfold, simply faded back into obscurity following her brief period in the spotlight in November 1888, and I have been unable to trace anything else about her. And so the curtain comes down on another tale that demonstrates the dangers that were lurking on the streets of Victorian London at the same time that Jack the Ripper was terrorising the East End of the Victorian Metroopolis. One thing that really intrigues me about the Fenwick case is the fact that it was never revealed what the information was that had reached the Treasury that the prisoner had been guilty of other offences that had been committed beyond the jurisdiction of the court. Was it related to the Whitechapel murders, or could it have been connected to other attacks that had occurred across London in the year of the Jack the Ripper atrocities? Unfortunately, we are destined now never to know. I hope you found this true crime tale interesting. If you have, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help. As always, I would be delighted to hear your observations and opinions, so please feel free to comment. But for now, until we meet again in the dark and mysterious labyrinth of Victorian London's true crime underworld, stay safe.